Hi, Gary.
Hey there.
What's going on?
Not much. How are you?
I'm good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Where are you coming out of?
I am in a town called Black Mountain, North Carolina.
I just talked to someone from North Carolina today. I had a friend years ago that would go on and on about how green it is there.
It is green beyond belief. Where I am, at least, we're up in the mountains near Asheville.
He actually gave a great summary. He was like a tourist poster. He was like, we have mountains, we have ocean, we have all four seasons. It's safe, it's affordable, like everything that you want to hear about the place you're in, which sounds pretty cool.
It is super nice. I don't know about the affordability. It's getting expensive around here, but it's delightful where we are, at least.
Good deal. Well, it's great to meet you. And before we get into your life and your work, which is fascinating, I'm curious, how did you survive COVID the last 3 years? How did you get through it? And how did it change you?
Oh my goodness. I well, the one piece of it is for a while there, I thought I must be one of these genetically gifted people who was above it all, because somehow I dodged it and dodged it, wasn't sick throughout the entire time, and only just this past April we did some traveling, and my wife and we came back, and we both got hit pretty hard. I had done all the vaccines and all that stuff, but we got hit pretty hard. So I'm not as genetically superior as I thought as I thought I was. But I had just retired from operating in neurosurgery. I had just stopped operating. I still teach a lot. And initially we hunkered down a fair amount like everybody else, but there was a local college that needed somebody to teach anatomy and physiology. So right in the early days, I went and was teaching anatomy and physiology. We were all masked up, and that was even before the vaccines. So that was a little weird. I didn't enjoy the whole masking thing in teaching, and found that it was very hard to read people's faces, and you didn't know whether you were holding their attention or not.
So,
So we did the usual stuff.
yeah. Sounds like it. So let me ask you this. To get a better handle on exactly what you do these days, I want to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day. And one of the kids looks up and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
Uh, Predominantly right now, I am teaching and writing, I would say, more than anything else. So I teach undergrads and medical students up at Virginia Tech, which is where I had practiced for a good 16 years or so. And the rest of the time I'm writing. I just put out a novel last month called Death's Pale Flag. I have two other novels in process. I'm writing blogs for Psychology Today. So teaching and writing.
Okay. So what did you want to be when you were in the third grade? What was your dream growing up?
Oh my gosh, I went through every iteration, and that went all the way through college. I think when I originally went to college, I was going to be a minister. I was thinking of going into the seminary, but that shifted, and for a while there, I was going to go into the FBI, then the CIA, and then the Naval Flight School, and somehow I had always held out the possibility of medicine, and ended up back in the medicine camp.
I would figure for something like brain surgery, it would have been on your radar very early on. It would just, that would be my assumption. But how did it happen? Talk to me a little bit about the seeds that were planted into you that eventually became a doctor, became someone in the sciences. How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I was always interested in science, and I was doing a lot of religion in college, but also biochemistry, as a major. But I think what happens a lot in medical school, there are definitely people in the discipline who knew they wanted to do it forever. But it's not uncommon in medical school to, kind of become attached to what seems interesting at the moment. And so you see all this cool stuff as you go along. And I did the same thing. I was going to be a family doc first, and then I was going to be a cancer doc, and then I was going to be a general surgeon, and then I had settled on cardiothoracic surgery. I was going to be a cardiothoracic surgeon and had my residency all set up. And the last month of medical school, I walked into a brain operation, saw one for the first time, and it was like I went, oh my God, I've got to do that. Which I tell medical students and undergrads now, it's the stupidest thing that somebody could do, because I all of a sudden was scrambling about trying to change horses in midstream, if you will, and had no idea what I was getting myself into, which was a lot. But in the end, somehow, by providence or stupidity or whatever, it worked out for the best, because I can't imagine doing anything differently, with my career.
Are you originally from North Carolina?
No, originally from God's country, New Jersey.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. The Garden State. So what was the first major surgery that you were a part of? Do you remember what it was like and how you felt? I mean, for a civilian, we think about brain surgery, and that's really, really like top of the food chain, something that not many people on the planet will ever do. So when you did it for the first time, what were you thinking? What was going through your head?
Yeah, I'm sure it's I'm sure a lot of people go through similar things with whatever they're doing for the first time. But for me, I think it was, oh my God, don't let me screw this up. Don't let me screw this up. It's a graduated process. Like, I trained residents for the last couple of decades, and you don't start by giving them the keys to the car and say, go ahead and do it. You start with the simplest of things. So, tying knots in as you're closing a wound, and then actually doing the sewing, and then doing the opening, and then you graduate further and further into the complexities of the cases and how complex the cases are. Neurosurgery, it's 7 years of training, so you get a lot of that curve of getting more and more complex, and by the time you get to the end, hopefully you feel fairly confident.
So pop culture has always put this idea in our head that when you're in the room doing their surgery, that there's one doctor playing Metallica really loud, or there's Vivaldi's getting blasted in the corner. How did that materialize? Was there music going? How did you relax in there?
Yeah, it's a great question. An operating room is a really noisy place. You would think, it's like, I don't know, a church, some high altar or something, but it's really noisy. Even just the air exchange machines are running. People are always talking, the anesthesia doing their things. There's just always a lot of hubbub going on. Our drills make a huge amount of noise. And I think various people have different ways, because ultimately, when, like in brain surgery, your whole mind gets focused on a very small area, which it really is, sometimes life and death or limb or whatever that depends on it. And your focus gets so intense that you really kind of drown out most of what else is happening around you. And it's interesting, because you come home exhausted without really physically doing all that much. But I think it's because your mind is so focused. But different people use different methods of doing that. Some of it's natural. I certainly liked music in the early days. It was fairly loud, and it can be quite loud in various rooms, the music itself. I think as I got older and started, just being, fussy and stuff, it got softer and softer. But Yeah, definitely. I think music helps a lot. We even studied it. We set up a lab where we tested dexterity of people and surgeons and stuff, and we tried different types of music at different decibels and stuff, and found that actually, it never seemed to hurt people's dexterity, and if anything, it seemed to help.
Yeah, that's interesting. The fascinating thing about that notion of what we get from pop culture and movies and all of that is like when a baby is delivered. I remember when my son, came into the world, and the way that I envisioned it was going to happen and what actually happened was 100% different. I mean,
Same with being a med student, I can tell you.
yeah, I bet. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is like you have this notion of all of these films compounded throughout your life because you've never been there. But when you get in there, it was a whole different thing. It was wild.
It's an interesting point because it's very hard to watch a medical show. You watch a medical show and you're going, oh my gosh, oh God, don't do that, don't say that. I and my wife and I, we tend to watch a lot of crime procedural dramas,
Yeah.
where a detective is figuring stuff out. I'm sure detectives sit there and watch these
Yeah,
shows and go,
right.
oh, that is utter bull.
That's totally true. Oh man. So, in your life, you're obviously a highly driven individual. Who's been a hero for you or a role model?
Oh God, I've been through so many. I will tell you that, I mean, I there are so many surgeons that I've worked with who are ridiculously inspiring. I trained at Walter Reed. I started in the Army, and I'm telling you, anybody who comes out of West Point is a hero to me. A, just because of what they dedicate their lives to, but B, just what amazing individuals they are and what they're able to accomplish. But by far, even more, what I've learned through the years, and who are kind of the true heroes, are the patients and the families that I've taken care of through the years. It never ceased to stun me, the sheer bravery and humanity, and I call it grace. I don't know what other term to use, of so many of my patients from every background that you can imagine, and their families. They're just, I mean, my world is a world of really bad stuff and bad news, brain tumors and horrible head injuries and spine fractures and all that sort of thing. And if you thrust me into any of those situations, I would lose it. I'd be throwing things through the windows and cursing at everybody. And just the sheer grace and guts and bravery of virtually everybody I've ever taken care of. I talk about it inspiring. You just can't imagine. I can't even put it in words.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. If you can meet anybody alive right now on the planet and spend some time with them, who would it be?
Probably Keith Richards.
That'd be cool.
I I would love to spend some time with Keith. Um, in my book, you see John Lennon come up, but he, of course, is gone. But I would have loved to have spent time with John Lennon for sure.
You,
So I guess it's famous musicians for sure.
yeah. Did you read the biography on Keith Richards?
I did, yes.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I remember years ago, I went to Seattle and I saw the Grateful Dead. And about a month and a half after that, Jerry Garcia passed. And he went into rehab and he pulled himself off everything. And I'm thinking Keith Richards, probably the secret to him is that he keeps doing it.
I I always use the term better living through chemistry.
Yes, yes, sir. Absolutely. For someone like Keith that is continuing to do what he does, I mean, all of these musicians, they're very highly driven. What has that been for you? What is it that always got you out of the bed and proverbially helps you not only be a doctor, but be an educator and to do all of these things so well?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One is I'm sure that had I been a child nowadays, I would have been medicated. I'm hyperactive. I can't sit still for 1 second. I can't keep my focus on one thing for very long. And so I need to be doing something. I need to be moving all the time. And I think I discovered, at least, remember I said that, I kind of almost fell into neurosurgery by accident, but I think there's an adrenaline junkie in there somewhere. So I would get bored, and that's a terrible way to say it, but it's true. If there wasn't some disaster occurring, I would be at trauma centers, and so these helicopters are always coming in. It's like war, they're always coming in with one horrible thing after another. But if for some reason it slowed down, I would kind of be thinking, well, what do I do next? What do I do next? So there must be some sort of adrenaline rush there just to be in the middle of a crisis.
So how did you maintain throughout all those years? You've mentioned several times so many things were awful to get involved with. Was there a level of desensitizing? Was there a shield you put over your soul? How did that happen for you?
It's a great question, because I've studied this a fair amount, and I've actually written 3 nonfiction books on burnout and building resilience in healthcare workers. And I think, yeah, your soul, your psyche is under assault all the time, and there are many different methods maybe to withstand it better. But I'm afraid, I think I threw up a lot of emotional walls. It's an interesting feature that once I stepped away from the operating table, up until then, I could face any of this stuff and just kind of roll right through it, one bad thing another, talk to a family about horrible stuff, and then roll right into an operation and that sort of thing. And it never really seemed to have much of an impact. Since I stopped doing it, I found myself much more emotional. I'll be sitting there watching some show, and tears will start streaming down my face, and I'm like, what the hell is this? I mean, even a cat food commercial can set it off, if they've done it well or something. So yeah, I think a lot gets buried, and it's not necessarily a healthy thing to allow that to happen, but it does happen. And then, it pops off somehow in different ways in different people. And thankfully, I had a remarkably supportive family and wife in particular, who I think was very tolerant of, not necessarily always having a human being come home.
So, of all this long vignette of surgeries you've been through and lives you changed and helped, is there one that stands out that puts a smile on your face, a particular situation where you're like, you remember it and you're like, wow, that was something else?
Yeah, probably more than one, for sure. But there's a style, or I don't even know what, a scenario that occurred with some frequency that made it into my novel. Um, uh, and that is, I did a lot of pediatric surgery, and more than for whatever reason, you come out of doing a child's brain surgery, and there was always a room just overstuffed with very nervous, very upset people. And you would come out, and you would, you could just feel the tension in the room, and you would say, we're done with surgery, everything went smoothly, I think things are going to be okay. And the family members would collapse around you, often cry and hug you, and boy, there's a feeling to that is irreproducible.
Yeah.
You just can't describe it fully, and you can't reproduce it. It's just an amazing feeling. Now, that gets countered by a lot of bad feelings. I've spent many a night, in the middle of the night, going over an operation over and over and over again, trying to figure out what we could have done better, and giving horrible news right and left and stuff. So it got countered a lot. But boy, that feeling, particularly with a child, of the gratitude of the family, it catches me right now
Oh,
talking
you
about
caught
it.
me when you were explaining that. That's deep. I'm 50, and one of the biggest moments of my childhood was watching Reagan when he got shot. Often wondered when they rushed him to the hospital, just from your experience, what doctors do they pick? How do they mobilize? How does that doctor respond to the fact that it's the president of the United States? How do you think that went down?
Yeah, I've read accounts of that, and I know people who know the people because I was in DC uh, for quite a while at Walter Reed. And I think number one, the big hospitals have trauma teams, and more so now than then. But now you have full trauma teams, and no matter who comes in, they collapse on the person. It's a dog and pony show. I mean, there are maybe 15 people surrounding the patient, cutting off clothes, putting in IVs, testing the belly, testing this, testing that, usually with some person kind of in command, weighing in things. And then you have a bunch of people documenting it and all that. And I think uh, you very quickly lose track of who it is. Now, I'm sure you are aware this is the president, and don't want to screw up. But at some point, kind of all the training kicks into gear, and you're just like, "Holy crap, this guy is gonna die if we don't get moving." And Reagan was in big trouble. So I think they probably very quickly zeroed in on that. And I would imagine it wasn't until they got home that night where they all of a sudden went, "Holy crap, what did we just do?"
Exactly. Yeah. I catch myself listening to some podcasts about early medicine. The mortality rate for women was really low. There was a lot of death in childbirth, just really archaic things. As a man of medicine and science, do you ever just get blown away by how far we've come, how many things have gotten better and better over time?
Yeah, I absolutely. I think it is. Yeah, I mean, as you say, if you're a student at all of it, it's stunning. And I think we take for granted pretty quickly how amazing things are now, and it just continues. I mean, it just continues to get more and more efficacious in these various diseases. There is childhood tumors, for example, brain tumors that when I started, it was pretty uniformly a death sentence, and now they're curing 70-80% of the kids through various chemotherapies and all. And so, making huge headways, and it just continues. But I really do think sometimes we forget what a miraculous age we live in, and maybe should give a little bit more thanks, be a little bit more gracious with one another. It seems like, as these last many years, we've been at each other's throats.
Yeah.
And you kind of look around and you say, God, guys, we live in a miraculous era. Maybe we could be a little easier on each other and
Uh-huh.
focus on some of the big problems that are coming down the pipe. Because to get here, with all this technology, we're killing our planet. I'm not sure what we're going to leave our kids.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to pivot a little bit here. We've talked about music. I see the guitar. We brought up Keith Richards. What was the first concert that you ever saw live that really blew you away, or the first album?
Oh, well, I mean, I grew up with the Beatles, and I mean, as a young kid, the Beatles, and then the Stones, and all that followed. I think the ones that imprint on you, it'd be interesting to hear what you think. But to me, the ones that imprint is somewhere in that early adolescence for whatever reason, and so it was Led 1 and Led 2
Yeah.
that really imprinted on my soul, where I was like, wow, this is music is really something. It should be a major part of my life. So definitely Led. Um, I also grew up. My dad was a big band fan, so we heard a lot of big band music
Yeah.
throughout the house. And then the best concert I ever went to, I really think, is Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I don't know how much you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but Blood, Sweat, and part of the reason why is it was in an acoustic hall rather than, I went to a lot of stadium rock and seeing things in a hockey arena and stuff, but this was in an acoustic hall. So their brass and all that stuff, just, it did blow me away. It was fantastic music.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I remember seeing Van Halen came to Kansas City. They had that kind of brief reunion in '07, and I saw him in Kansas City. Kool and the Gang opened up for him. I'm like, that's such a weird pairing. And I found out later, recently, David Lee Roth did an interview, and the first concert that Eddie ever saw, Dave took him to, and it was Kool and the Gang.
Isn't that neat?
Isn't that cool?
Again, these things imprint on your soul, I think, and you can't,
Wow.
you can't get away from them.
It's beautiful. So, in all of these things that you've done and accomplished in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Oh, I'm super proud of my kids. I have 3 boys. And I say proudest of it. I take no credit because I really I think my wife, it was pretty much a single mom because I was in the hospital pretty much nonstop for decades. But my boys, I was very fearful. Being a neurosurgeon, I was fearful that they would grow up to be entitled little pricks. And we worked hard not to, live some sort of lavish lifestyle and all that. But, you worry about it. They all grew up to be, they're all men now, but they all grew up to be sensitive, amazing people who, care about their fellow man, their fellow people, and really, always want to do the right thing and the kind thing. And I'm certainly very proud of that. Although, as I said, I take very little credit other than hopefully a few genes thrown in there. And my wife, I think, did an amazing job with them.
I often wonder with retired physicians, the amount of time that you had to spend, the amount of sacrifice that you had to make. Now in this retirement era, do you find yourself running harder to kind of make up or to kind of chew away all that time that you were in the office to kind of really maximize your time?
Yeah, I gotta say, I haven't learned how to completely shift gears out of it. So I find my days are much like you notice there's a banjo down there too.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my goals was to, be spending 4 hours a day playing instruments and really getting good because I am not good. I love playing, but I am not a virtuoso by any stretch of the imagination. And I very much want to, I have Scottish roots. I very much want to teach myself the bagpipes as well. And I had all those dreams of doing that, and I haven't gotten anywhere close to that. I thought I'd be spending more time writing, and I just can't seem to find the time with that as well. So yeah, it's pretty jam-packed right now. And one of the main goals was to spend a hell of a lot more time with my wife, and I'm only getting maybe a C- on that. So yeah, time fills really quickly, even though it's not all scheduled out like it used to be.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 20-year-old version of yourself, and you could give that younger version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've led and the wisdom you've gained. What would you tell your younger version?
I think a couple of things. One is develop mentors, truly develop more mentors, listen to other people. I don't know why, but I always thought I'll do this myself. Everything is going to be driven by myself. I can, master this. Nobody has to tell me. And that was stupid. I would have learned a lot more, a lot earlier, a lot quicker had I actually put a lot of faith in other people who have been through it and had ideas and thoughts. And, instead I had to, trip my way along and figure these things out by myself, which was pretty stupid. But the other one would certainly be pace myself more. I think I always dealt with life as a sprint rather than a marathon. And I certainly had fallout from that. And I think pacing oneself, giving oneself breaks, taking care of oneself periodically is not a bad idea.
So, Gary, everyone out there has a perception of you. You have family, friends, students, clients, colleagues, everybody around you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh my gosh.
This is the therapy segment.
I know. It all started when I was a child and I didn't get that GI Joe I wanted. Um, yeah, no, geez. I'll tell you what I want to be. I want to be a good guy. My ego structure is such that I have to believe that I'm a good guy, meaning that I'm contributing, that I'm not making people feel bad, that I'm helping people one way or the other. And I'm never satisfied that I'm accomplishing that. So it's more what I want to be than what I am. I think, I'm a human being. I have my share of failings, oversights, selfishness, narcissism. But I want to be a good person and work hard at that.
So, Gary, if anyone wants to pick up your book, learn more about you, everything related to your world, where's the best place for them to go?
Well, I have a website that I try to make somewhat attractive, but it's at just my name, Gary, Garyr, Simonds, but it's spelled like Simon, so it's Simonds.com. So GaryRSimons.com.
Excellent. Gary, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for opening up and giving me your story. I appreciate it.
Oh my goodness, this has been far more exciting and fun than I had anticipated, Joe. This is great.
This is.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Best of luck with the book. Yeah, best of luck with the successive books, and any music you get out there, let me know. I'm a huge fan. I'd love to hear what you got.
Oh, absolutely. I am a huge music fan. Asheville really pulls in music talent too. It's a great place to visit if you ever are looking for a place to catch a lot of music.
Yeah. I actually really do hear a lot about Asheville, and I would love to get down there. So yeah, it's on my list.
Well, drop me a line then. I'll show you around.
Yes, sir. I would love to. Gary, this has been great. Thank you, sir.
You too. Thank you so much.
Have a great weekend.